Thank you. This is the only town meeting of the year that we fill up, so, and it'll be filled up for about 15 minutes. Sam, would you lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance?
Stand.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing. And this is probably one of the very few board meetings where we say a prayer. Heavenly Father, bless this assemblage. Grant us the wisdom to make our every decision fair-minded and in the best interest for all its residents. Please remain standing for just a moment for a few people and their families. Sam Maserbo, Frank Snyak, and the sitting trustee, John Branca, former mayor. And please keep the families that were affected by the bombings in Boston in your prayers as well. Thank you.
First Bishop,
That's all yours.
Yep, thank you.
well, tonight is my favorite night of the year in terms of the town meetings, because it's the night we hear from our students of our community. Now, my wife is here observing, and she said, you're going to make certain to have the presentation early in the meeting so I don't have to stick around for the rest of it. So I said, absolutely. So I won't get into trouble at home. What I'd like to do is call the meeting to order, then we'll turn it over to Professor Tobin. Can I get a motion to bring the meeting to order?
So moved.
Second. Hope, would you call the roll?
Nioras, Mendicino, Villanova,
Yes.
Carvin.
Yes. Okay, with no further ado, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Tobin and your team.
Thank you so much for giving us the time tonight. I wanted to begin by, and I promise to be brief.
Can you close that, please? So it's Capitol Theater people.
I want to be very brief. I want to begin by sharing with you that Stanford University did a study of its undergraduate education last year. Here's what they want their undergraduates to do. They want them to do two things. One is they want them to lean into a broad variety of experiences when they're on campus, and they want them to develop a set of skills and knowledge and mindsets while they're on campus. The second thing they want them to do is they want them to bring that knowledge, experience, and skills to bear in a collaborative manner to solve an open-ended problem. To bring those skills and mindsets together to collaboratively solve an open-ended problem in whatever field of endeavor they're interested in. And because Stanford knows that the best processes of learning and developing skills happen in diverse or inclusive settings, and that the most innovative solutions and most practical solutions happen through diverse and innovative teams, they have an incredibly diverse campus. So they have, for the last 2 years, they have admitted a minority-majority incoming class. Okay, Stanford, we're not all going to Stanford. We don't all want to go to Stanford. There's 3 million high school students who graduate in the United States. 1,800 will go to Stanford. You know what's interesting? The mission Stanford has is remarkably similar to what Joe wanted us to do when we talked about the program 4 years ago. It's remarkably similar to the U.S. military's mission. It's remarkably similar to West Point's mission. Again, it's collaboratively in a diverse environment that reflects America, solve an open-ended problem. It's remarkably similar to our colleges, what we're trying to get our best students to do. And why all these places want the kids to do this is because it's really rare. It's really rare. The undergraduate report at Stanford is basically saying we want this to happen because it's not happening enough at Stanford. And while it's hard, is what Stanford wants, what the military academy wants, what our best businesses want, what our governments want. This isn't about moving information from one school to another. It's not about guessing the answer the teacher has. It's about thinking and doing together. You can't outwork a kind of problem like that. You have to outthink it. And here, I think what we've tried to do in the 4 years with the vision and support of the people up front and the ideas and energy of a lot of people in this room is to run a little experiment to see if we could help students to develop that ability in high school. The ability to work in a diverse or inclusive setting and to solve an open-ended problem in that context. One quick question. That's not what the criterion is to get into these places. The admissions criterion is different. But what they want their best students to do, that's what we want to focus on, because that's what we can control. And we all have to, the people up here have to decide whether it's been successful, but I'd like to at least share very, very briefly some positive and encouraging measures from this 4-year experiment. This year we had 34 students, equally divided among the 3 high schools in the area. We crafted a great research question the students are going to talk to you about. They went out in the community with adults representing an incredibly wide array of organizations in the town to collect data. They wrote up a report that we're presenting tonight. They're going to present the report tonight. Incredibly impressive. The best report we produced. But you know what I think is the most interesting thing is the process. So I treat them like I treat a Duke undergraduate. No, that idea's stupid. You got to do better. Think a little harder. Will that work in the real world? And they're up to it. I think we need to do income measures on the survey that are not tied to dollar amounts because some members of the community would be hesitant to answer that question. That's a high-level response. I'd like my Duke students to be thinking through survey methods like that. We probably want to think about this in terms of the Spanish language survey. I'll take over the Spanish language survey, Dr. Taylor. Don't worry about it. And you know what? I didn't. There were 5 students on the Spanish language survey team. 3 of them were Spanish language speakers. 2 of them were learning Spanish language. And they produced a great survey, and when I asked the students about that process, it was a really rich process. So the part of what I want you to see, what you won't see today in the finished product, is the process. And it's the process that we want, because how you get to be able to do what the town government, what Joe wants to do, what our best firms and organizations want, what our military wants, what our best colleges want, you've got to practice that. And so you've got to create a condition where you can practice that. Practice the skill of answering a question that doesn't have a right answer. And that's the only way I think you get good at it. Here's the final note. When I started the program, I was hoping that it might have some synergies that would impact the community. And in the second page of the report, I don't know if the slide is up there. Is the slide close to the front, the one I wanted? The slides on the acknowledgement? It's at the end. Okay. Well, the point I want to make is the participation of the community is an unexpected. This is what happens when you buy a cheap phone that your wife tells you not to be cheap about. It just turns on and turns off on its own, calls people. She said, so you saved $100. That's what she said. I'm not going to tell her what happened tonight. But I think what happened this year was that the seed money that the town had given us, we were able to leverage that. We had a range of funders in the second page. And so the program began to have a public-private character, which I think is the best kind of program in this era, where governments are going to have to do less, and the best governments, the governments with the foresight, are going to try to encourage things and letting the community run with it. We've had a great mix of private funders and public funders this year. We had in-kind support from the schools and PepsiCo. And then what I think is for me is most heartening, and I'm coming to the end here, the students, when they go out in the community, they need adult chaperones. We had, I think, 15 adult chaperones representing the NAACP, League of Women Voters, the Rotary, a cross-section of the community. And what I want the supervisors to hear is that we appreciate so much the confidence you had in the program, and we've worked really hard to bring that program to a place that you can be proud of and that your confidence has been repaid. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share and have our students share with you today, and I appreciate your vision and support for the program over the years. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. Thank you very much, Dr. Tobin. I can't thank you enough. But I'll make my comments at the end, and I'll continue to turn it over to your team, your able team.
Hello. My name is Kyle Thomas. I'm a senior at Portchester High School, and welcome to the Tools for Change PowerPoint presentation. We'll be sharing our findings and sharing our research and our process. About our study. When we started our study, we noticed that there are a few certain trends that have been going on over the past few years. Community volunteering has seen an increase recently, while civic engagement has been on a decline. We really wondered about why that happens, and the idea of civic engagement, a set of actions and efforts to improve the community, and the feeling of belonging to a community, and that's a really important aspect to have, along with the volunteering. So we've also noticed we've done a good job in increasing opportunities for people to volunteer in their communities. And volunteering is good. It shows the community that people do legitimately care. But there needs to be something done about bringing residents closer to their government. So we really wanted to explore whether there was a link between the connectedness that people have in their community and the satisfaction of those people who live in it. Which brings us to the ultimate research question. What is the relationship between the willingness of Rytown residents to improve their community environment and their satisfaction with the town and its government? And now I will hand it over to Lara Cohen, who will continue the presentation.
Hi, I'm Lara Cohen. I'm from Blindbrook High School. So when approaching this study, we of course had to look back at prior research, which is what our review of literature involved. So it's important to keep in mind that research is more than just numbers. It's a social concept. So when looking at research, you really have to view it as a conversation with other studies and other scientists and looking at what they've seen and then building upon it. So we really tried to see what previous studies have done in terms of their definitions in this field, as well as the previous concepts that they established, so that we would have original, novel, and also plausible research. Okay, well, there was a slide missing, but essentially, with the review of literature, It's fine. It's really important to note the different things that you take into account. So previous studies in this field have really given a more loose definition to what exactly social contact and civic engagement is. In the past, 2 different scientists, one of them including Haggerty, have done a number of different research studies on really how people interact with their government. So the definition that we decided to adopt for our own study was that civic engagement and social contact could include anything from volunteering to being more active in the neighborhood. And by putting forward a more expansive and kind of informal definition, we were able to have our survey and our overall question apply to more people in the community. So now Taylor will go into our actual survey questions.
Hello everyone, I'm Taylor Salvatore and I'm a junior at Bolingbrook High School, and I'll be telling you about our methods. So, for our research question, we decided that a survey would be the best method, due to the fact that our question could be answered simply with multiple choice questions and yes or no questions. In addition to this, it also provided us with the largest sample size possible. We created a survey, We created a survey that asked questions about our residents' demographics, their attitudes towards our community, and their civic engagement patterns. Due to the fact that the best results come from research tools and teams that reflect the diversity in our community, we offered both an English and Spanish language survey, and used research teams and tools that reflected the diversity in our town. Some difficulties that we had while conducting our survey was the fact that some people found their directions confusing, or some people didn't read our directions. Other people simply rejected our invitation to participate in our survey. It happens. Next slide, please. Next year, we have decided to revise our survey, making sure the directions are clear, highlighting important points, and making it obvious what we want from the people. In addition to this, we will be supplying a brief research summary of what we're doing so that people understand what our goal is. To gain more attention, we'll be setting up a table, or asking permission to set up a table, at our locations so that people understand what we're doing and why we're there. Our result was a pleasing and, surprisingly, 244 completed surveys. This is more than twice the amount that we've ever gotten in the past. And although this isn't a perfect sample of our demographics, it's a nice snapshot of our diversity. Thank you. I'll be turning it over to Annabelle, Luke, and Rachel.
Hello, my name is Annabelle Gutterman. I'm a junior at Rhinebeck High School. In order to answer our research question, we needed to come up with findings that we could create policy recommendations for. To give you a rough estimate, 22% of those surveyed were from Rhinebeck, 28% from Rybrook, and 50% from Portchester. We found that the most common forms of civic engagement included voting and being active in government, being friendly and concerned with neighbors, and shopping locally. Our first major finding was that Rye-Town citizens don't consider Rye-Town to be their community. And only 17% of the 244 surveyed identified Rye-Town as their community. This is a big deal and helps us answer our research question because we can see where people are being civically engaged, and we can isolate the areas of the town where engagement needs to be improved. The second finding that we found was that citizens are more satisfied with their community than their town government. And we can infer from our statistics from the data that if knowledge of this relationship between town government and local community was better understood, then perhaps people would be more inclined or satisfied in their local community. I'll turn over to Luke.
So our third major finding was that despite a strong desire to improve the community, citizens were reluctant to be engaged because they didn't feel that their contributions could actually make a difference. In our surveys, the overwhelming majority responded that they felt the most effective method for the town to garner more engagement and volunteerism and such would be to highlight the needs in the town where they need people to be engaged and show how there had been past successes in that area and how they could actually make a positive impact in the community.
people were uninformed about just exactly what engagement means to the community and where it would be most useful, and a lot of them felt that by the town showing that, they would be able to be better involved. So the ultimate goal of the project was to develop policy recommendations to make to the town so that they could help to improve the satisfaction of their constituents. Our first recommendation ties into the third finding in that people didn't quite understand the opportunities that they had to become involved. So our first is to create a sort of clearinghouse to advertise opportunities to be engaged in the community. It could be both online or in person at various events in the towns, both in the villages and the town of Rye. And it could really help to show people where there are opportunities to be involved and how they can actually make an impact. So we want to advertise the positive impacts that they can make and where they'd be able to most make those impacts.
And then our second policy recommendation was to publicize past successful volunteerism and civic engagement, and along with this, to publicize and advertise future opportunities for civic engagement. And this recommendation also goes with the finding of how people would be more inclined to volunteer if they saw the impact that they were making. And if there was a frequent distribution which highlighted these impacts, then people would be more satisfied. And if then, along with the past success stories, the future volunteer opportunities were advertised, there would be an increase in participation. And coinciding with the recognitional distributions on volunteerism, it would be motivational to institute age-bracketed and village-level and city-level awards, not only commending people for their existing involvements, but to also encourage even higher level of civic engagement in the Rye town. And then on to our third policy recommendation is to create a sort of system, possibly in the Model American Communities program, in which there are satellite programs at each of the separate villages, which then funnel into a collaborative program. And this would improve interaction within the Rye town entities and increase community awareness of how the Rye town relates to each civilian. And we would like to begin a conversation with the town officials on how exactly we may implement these policy recommendations.
Wonderful. Thank you. Is that it, or did you want to?
Open it up to questions from the audience. If anyone has questions, raise your hands.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. It is here.
So, if any of you have questions?
Yeah. First, I want to tell you something. United we stand, divided we fall. You've got to know the history of our country. And one of the most important things you have to know and remember, we have a Bill of Rights, freedoms in this country. I don't know whether you're taught about our Bill of Rights, which was added to the United States Constitution. Our Bill of Rights gave us freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right of redress, the right to bear arms, no search and seizure, okay? 13th and 16th Amendment gave people of color some rights. The 19th Amendment finally gave me and my sex the right to vote. I'm not giving you all our freedoms and all our rights, but I'm telling you right now.
Okay, Goldie, do you have a question? Goldie, do you have a question?
Yeah. How does government represent the people? It lives off us. Our taxes live off them. They live off us, but they don't represent us. They only care about their pay, their benefits, and their retirement, which they control. So, how does government represent the people? If we do not unite,
So the question?
or an American Revolution, we're dead.
Professor Tobin, I think you need to take the show on the road and go to D.C. with these fine students to get that answer for Goldie.
I'm a volunteer.
Okay. So did anybody want to answer how the government represents the people? Any answers to that?
I think they represent us by helping to fund programs such as this that really help students and young people to be involved in the community and
They
help
say, but they don't
express.
do
Other questions?
Findings that we had or policy recommendations?
I think there's a question in the back there, Rachel.
Yes.
I'm curious to know if you surveyed for gender, if there was a difference between gender, how they responded.
We did survey gender. Do you remember the findings for gender? I don't think there was a significant difference, but I'm pretty sure we do have our findings that you can see. Yeah.
That's something, there's lots of analysis that we haven't had an opportunity to do yet. And Councilman Dave has begun to do a little of the analysis, but the data is really rich, and we've really just scratched the surface of some of the findings and correlations that we can develop with the data. Does that sound right? Yeah. We also...
Well, like you said, Bill, this is an open-ended question, and like many open-ended questions, the way to answering them needs to be changed as well. So next year, when we do this again, I'm sure that the survey that we use and the sort of questions that we ask to get a clear picture of the community will be different, because the question will be different, how to answer the question will be different, and it's really just a big experiment that keeps happening.
But I would also say that within the findings that we did have, we also did see a difference, and we still have to look through more of the findings. Everything about the gender that wasn't our main focus in this particular survey and findings, but definitely would be very interesting to look at and further review.
Thank you. No, hold on, Goldie, it's not your turn. Goldie, it's not your turn. There's another question.
My town is very important.
Goldie, it's not your turn. It's another question, yes.
I'd just like to know if you asked any of your respondents about the efforts to dissolve the town of Rye. Were they aware of it? And if so, what was their reaction to it?
I actually did have a conversation with one of the leads that surveyed, actually, and she had no idea that she lived in the town of Rye, except that she paid taxes there, which was a little bit of an awkward conversation. But the problem I see is truly that maybe it needs to be more known that you live in Rye town itself, but the people that did know that they lived in Rye town really embraced Rye town. So I really do think that if we put the effort into really making it known that you live in Rye town and there's more than just taxes here, that there could be more success in the town.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I think there's a question in the back, Rachel. Yeah.
Was there any differences, distinction between the answers to questions amongst the three villages of the town?
There's a big difference.
When I was looking through the sample that I collected, I saw that more in Portchester, people were less satisfied with the educational system, but other than that, I don't really recall many of the differences.
Well, in putting together the information that we received from the surveys, I gathered the facts that the differences between the town's answers to the surveys almost varied on their economic statuses and also statuses and diversity. So I think that the different answers that we got them because of the different circumstances in those towns, and I think that shows a very big impact.
Are you aware that all people of diversity and all colors, sizes, and shapes are Americans in Rye Town? Okay, as long as you're aware, because it doesn't make any difference.
Any other?
All Americans.
Yep, thank you.
Every town is very different, but I think we do have a large demographic, especially shown in our survey. We do have everybody.
Does everybody know the history of Rye Town?
Goldie,
They do, but...
Well, that's the problem.
Goldie, this isn't a hearing on Capitol Hill. Give me a break.
Not on Capitol Hill.
any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions from the audience? Yep.
I have to
I I know.
want to tell everybody that I actually went through the survey, but there's one thing I want you to, if you think about, I noticed that there were differences in the level of satisfaction in the villages, but they were for different reasons. Like you said, Portchester is dissatisfied with their school. What about the other two communities? What were the things that they were dissatisfied with?
I remember seeing that Rybrook was not exactly very diverse. That was one of their main issues. And I don't remember Rhinebeck. Do any of you remember?
I think it was government. Yeah, it was the strongest,
Government was extremely high, which isn't unusual. But other than that, it was very different. Each village had a different outcome.
But Rye-Town is a diverse community.
The town itself is diverse.
Yes.
But the villages within Rye-Town might not be as diverse.
Absolutely. Are there any more questions?
So what's the next question that came, if you were to do something else now, what would you do?
Well, I think something interesting that we do each year, I've been in the program for 3 years now, and we always kind of build upon last year's question and what interesting kind of tidbits we saw in it for the next year. So although we might not necessarily go forward with the same exact question about civic engagement now that we've found our answer to it, there are other interesting facts that have come up in it, such as the dissolution of Rye-Town and people's opinions on it, as well as the diversity in the 3 different towns. So once we fully analyze all of the data that we have and really the correlation between each variable, it'll be easier to see some sort of significance that might be interesting to further look into in the future.
I have one more. I'm sorry. Has your opinion of each other's schools and each other's villages changed through this program?
Well, I have a funny one. Rhinebeck has amazing food. The thing that was interesting with Rhinebeck is Blindbrook school districts are kind of similar size-wise, and they're both middle high schools. Portchester, I'm lost the second I get in to the school, so I think every village is so individual, and it's been really interesting to learn about them.
Well, what I found is I didn't even know that Rhinebeck existed, to be honest. I had no idea. And then I went to the school and I was like, oh my gosh, there's actual people here. And just getting to know those people and getting to know the people in all the schools was an amazing experience, and I'm definitely closer with them now.
I think something interesting is that, especially in Rye-Town, and an issue that we saw in our survey is that the villages kind of keep secluded to themselves and don't really expand beyond those borders. So being in this program and just getting to meet students that are so like you, and you had no idea they were 5 minutes away, it's not really related to the research, but it's just an interesting overall social lesson and really beneficial.
Yeah, and I think that seeing how people from different schools approach different problems in different ways gives you more ways to figure out answers to these questions that we want to ask, which is just really interesting, and it's been a pleasure to take a part of.
So this is my second year in the program, and before I joined last year, I actually didn't even know that Portchester and Blindbrook were part of Rye-Town, similar to many of the people that we were surveying. So now I know that, which is interesting.
I think it's just really great to get to work with the students from different schools, because normally we would never cross paths, and now we've been able to develop relationships working with Kyle or Lara, Taylor, Rachel, or anybody else, and you get to learn and see how they handle problems differently, and it really gives you insight into different methods of problem solving.
Well, I was kind of surprised going to the different schools and seeing all the different programs that the other two schools had that Portchester didn't, or the programs that Portchester had that the other schools didn't. So I think that just left a very big impression on me, and I think I learned most, that these programs can really help, and if we, all band together in those programs, that maybe we can have some more integration like that. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. Can I turn over to questions from the board? Questions, comments from the board?
No, I just want to say you guys did a great job. Thank you so much for taking the time out to come and present it to us, and and you're making our community a better place to live in.
Bob?
I think you all do a great job. I've listened to it 3 times now. I think every year it gets a little bit better. You get more practice in delivering your responses and answering questions. I think it's a great group of kids. Hopefully you learned a lot from this, and next year we'll do something even better.
Thank you. I want to thank Professor Tobit again and all the student participants. And it's nice to see how well this program has grown. The people that rejected the invitation to participate, although unfortunate, is almost a response. Okay, so that's what we talk about quite often, and the Legal Room voters, we talk about participation. So people just sometimes they just don't want to participate, and that's part of the problem, right? What was that?
Builds character.
Oh yeah. The one thing that I did take away from the slides is the opportunity to have town satellite representation in the communities. So maybe we can work on that as a program. Maybe see if we can maintain, maybe if it's an hour or 2 hours a month, prior to maybe a village board meeting where a town official can go to one of those meetings and be there. I think that struck a chord with me. I think it was a very good takeaway for me. So once again, thank you, and thanks to the parents and everyone that supported this program. We look forward to seeing this continue to grow, and 2014 is right around the corner. So thanks again, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
First and foremost, thanks for an absolutely wonderful presentation. This is 4 years running, and I agree with Councilman Nioras, it gets better every year. Can we go back to the recommendation slide for a second? I do want to respond to a couple of these, because I think you nailed the reality. First and foremost, the reality that you nailed is I remember I was there one Sunday helping getting the surveys, and I think our success rate was probably for every person, 3 people asked, we probably got 1 to fill it out if we were lucky, right? Maybe 3 or 4. So one thing you got to sense is what it's like to be a public official campaigning. And politicians are not well liked by, I certainly have a certain sympathy, empathy. When can I tell you why I'm running for office? No, you can't. And can I tell you why you're taxed? No, you can't. So throw the bums out. But that was hopefully a useful experience for you. Second thing is I want to just go through the recommendations and the conclusions. I think you're absolutely right. A lot of people don't know they live in the town of Rye. I to be honest, before I ran for office, I didn't fully understand what the town of Rye was. And I'm still trying to figure out. And I think your survey was accurate. 70% of the people sort of identify. I am actually, quite frankly, almost surprised that as many as 17% identify with the town of Rye, because most people identify with Rybrook or Portchester or Rhinebeck/Mamaroneck. So that was an interesting find, I think, an accurate find as well. Now, I wanted to talk about these because one of the goals here is to, take advantage of these recommendations and execute and utilize. We don't want to just get recommendations, we want to follow up. We want to make volunteers, make it more clear volunteers and get them in communities. I really like your second recommendation and third recommendation in particular. And now, Mr. Thomas and Mr. Arcaro, the secret to our success is to have great people doing the program, and of course we take the credit for it. So, Mr. Thomas and Arcaro, I want to follow up. You guys are going to be charged with following up on these recommendations. The second one in particular, every month from here on out, for the rest of 2013, I want to celebrate a local volunteer. In fact, I don't want to embarrass her, but I just saw Camille Lennon walk in. Camille Lennon, I can't wait to celebrate. Camille was my English teacher, and we wouldn't have probably anywhere near the theater events we have if it weren't her. and her daughters and her granddaughters. And Camille Leonard, exactly the kind of people I want to celebrate each month. I've had that idea for a long time. Thank you for making that idea a reality. And Mr. Thomas, Mr. Carvin, the board, what I want to do is Mr. Noto, our town attorney, I'm going to come up with a recommendation. I want to celebrate and give a Rye-Town Award of meritorious conduct, contribution to our community. I want to make sure we do it every month. So I really embrace that second recommendation. And the third, I like as well. I think you guys have understood the Mile American community. I still think some of my fellow colleagues in the town are trying to understand what the Mile American community is. And I think what we really need to do is work with each of the villages, find out what are all the different groups out there and make a reality. So I quite like that last recommendation as well. I want to also give special thanks to Debbie Reisner. We wouldn't have a special public-private partnership this year if it wasn't for her. Everybody knows we're in a very difficult financial environment, and so Debbie took it upon herself to go out and raise monies for the program and make it a true public-private partnership, bring different. So I want to thank Debbie Reisner for all that you've done.
Contributed funds are acknowledged on our.
Let's get them to.
One more.
Go get
There we go.
Yes.
So.
Give them a second to see that.
Building Community Bridges, Town of Rye, Littleton Weissman, Regional News Network, Westchester County Youth Board, and Littleton Weissman. Funny way, great. Good for him. The League of Women Voters, Educational Foundation, Inc., and Laura Loud Bierman, Laura is the executive director of that.
Yes.
In-kind sponsor, Blind Brook Youth School District, the League of Women Voters, Portchester School District, Rhinebeck School District, and PepsiCo. We can't thank all. Actually, that's what the Mile American community is all about. Is trying to get different entities, different people participating, trying to make this a better community. I can guarantee you, no one can argue that our community is not better served after seeing these young people come out and make a recommendation and get involved. There's a couple other people I want to thank. Principal Huey from Blind Brook. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you for your support from home. Sheriff Zarkawa, Blind Brook School Board, thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your support from the program. Dr. Fife from Rhinebeck School District, you've really taken this program on. Thank you so much for all you do. And most importantly, I want to thank Professor Bill Tobin, Duke University professor, coming out here to Portchester, New York. Go Blue Devils. None of this would be on reality without Bill. So, look, I think, the country suffered a horrific tragedy yesterday. And, I think that it's nice to see that our young people involved. It's a far more difficult, far more complex world that you're encountering. And it's precisely these kinds of tools and these kinds of programs are going to help you survive and make our community a better community and a better America. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's give everybody 2 minutes. Unless you want to stay and hear about the certiorari filings, we'll give people a couple minutes just to break.